It's a machine we ride every single day, and we never give it a second thought. But what happens when that complex hidden world of gears and chains fails in the most terrifying way you can imagine? Today, we're going to dig into a horrifying event that peels back the curtain on the escalator, and it reveals an incredible story of genius-level engineering and just shocking human failure.
So, let's set the scene. It's October 23rd, 2018. You've got thousands of super excited football fans pouring into Rome's metro system, all heading to a huge match. The atmosphere is just electric, right? They're chanting, they're singing, as they all funnel down this one long escalator at the Repubblica station.
And right here, this is where it all goes wrong. And it happens so fast. At 7:03 p.m., there are maybe 50 people on the escalator. But just 1 minute later, that number almost doubles. The sheer weight is too much for the motor. It starts to slip. Okay, so a safety relay trips, the main brake clamps down, but it doesn't hold. Then the final emergency brake is triggered, and at 7:05 p.m., that fails too. The steps don't just stop, they start to accelerate, just free falling down. People are just thrown forward in this terrifying human avalanche. And at the bottom, the stairs themselves actually buckle and twist into a mess of jagged metal. People are getting trapped, crushed in this horrifying pileup. When the dust finally settles, 24 people are injured, some of them very badly.
Now, here's the thing that's so crazy about this. A modern escalator doesn't just have one safety system. It has three, and they're all independent. The odds of all three of them failing at the exact same time, it's basically zero. It's just not supposed to happen. So investigators knew right away this was no simple accident. They suspected something was seriously wrong. And to understand just how right they were, we kind of have to understand the machine itself. The journey of the escalator, from just a wild idea to the reliable machine we know today, well, it was surprisingly tough. And its origins are probably not what you'd expect. That's right. The very first moving staircase wasn't for commuting, it was an amusement park ride. It was called the Continuous Elevator, and it debuted at Coney Island. It didn't even have steps. It was basically just a slow-moving ramp tilted at a 25-degree angle that took you up about 7 feet. And people loved it. It was a huge hit. But Reno's ramp had a big problem. That 25-degree angle was actually pretty scary. People would just grip the handrail for dear life. Now, there was an even earlier design called the revolving stairs that did have steps, but they tilted forward when you got to the top, which made getting off, let's just say, a bit of a nightmare. So the big challenge was obvious. How do you make a staircase that moves, but is also actually safe to get on and off? Well, the solution came from an inventor named George Wheeler, and his absolutely brilliant idea is the foundation for every single escalator you have ever set foot on. But before we get to his solution, just think about this for a second. We've all seen it, right? The steps just flatten out and poof, they disappear under the floor. What in the world are they doing on their return trip right underneath our feet?
Well, one logical idea is that they stay level the whole time, kind of like the cabins on a Ferris wheel, just doing a simple loop. Makes sense, right? Seems plausible.
Or maybe they do the exact opposite. To save space, maybe they flip completely upside down for the return trip, and then they just pop back up at the bottom. So which one is it?
The answer is theory 2. And this is where you can really see Wheeler's genius. See, each step has 2 sets of wheels, and they run on 2 separate tracks. When you're going up, the tracks are right next to each other. But at the top and bottom, the tracks actually separate, and that's what forces the steps to flatten out into a nice level platform for you to get on and off. Then, for the trip back down, the tracks guide the steps to flip completely upside down. It's just so clever.
And over the next few decades, this design just got better and better, with all these little safety features. The metal comb plate at the end, that was added so it would interlock perfectly with the grooves on the steps. And those little brushes on the side, they're there to keep your shoes from getting caught. Even the handrails are designed to move just a tiny bit, like 2%, faster than the steps. That's to make sure they always keep up, even as the parts wear down over time.
But honestly, the most brilliant safety feature of all is something called regenerative braking. Think about it. When an escalator going down is full of people, all that weight is enough to start spinning the motor itself. So the motor actually resists that spin, which creates a braking force that controls the speed. And in doing that, it flips from using power to, get this, producing power. It becomes a generator. It's not just efficient, it's what makes the machine inherently safe, which of course brings us back to Rome and the huge question of how this could possibly fail. So now that we know how an escalator is supposed to work, investigators started taking apart the wreckage, and what they found was evidence of a deliberate, systematic takedown of every single safety feature we just talked about. Okay, so here's the sequence of events. First, the weight of all those fans completely overwhelms the motor. That triggers the main brake, which should have been more than strong enough to stop it cold. But it didn't. So that failure triggers the final mechanical emergency brake, the absolute last resort. And that failed too. The 2-year investigation revealed exactly why. Tests showed the main brake's stopping power was only at 37% of what the manufacturer required, just over a third of its required strength. It was way too weak to do its job. This crucial safety system was completely compromised. But the next discovery, this is the one that is just unbelievable. When investigators finally got to the emergency brake, they found that one of its 2 big steel wedges, the parts that are supposed to literally jam the drive shaft to a dead stop, had been physically tied off with plastic straps, making it totally useless. The last line of defense hadn't just failed, it had been sabotaged. Now, any of these failures should have been automatically recorded in the escalator's error log, but when investigators checked, nothing. Someone had actually reprogrammed the system to stop recording fault codes. They were basically making the machine blind to its own life-threatening problems. This wasn't just neglect, it was an active cover-up. And if you want to understand the mindset that led to this, just listen to this chilling wiretap prosecutors released. It's a manager from the Transit Authority, ATCAC. He says, quote, "If you run the numbers, out of 700 escalators, there'd be like 3 or 4 more dropping. Come on." The prosecutors pointed out he seemed completely unfazed by the fact that there would be people on those escalators. To him, it was all just a numbers game. That one comment, really, it painted the whole picture. The problem here wasn't the machine. It was something way more fundamental. And that's because when they're actually maintained properly, escalators are incredibly safe. I mean, just in the US and Canada, we take over 100 billion trips on them every single year. The safety margins are massive. You could literally park an elephant on a single step and it wouldn't break. Failures like the one in Rome are almost unheard of. And that's why the investigation came to such a clear conclusion. This wasn't a story about bad engineering. It was a story about falsified maintenance records, safety devices being deliberately disabled, and a whole culture of negligence from the very people in charge of public safety. The technology was brilliant, the human responsibility was not. And that leaves us with a really critical question that goes way beyond this one escalator in Rome. No matter how brilliantly we engineer our technology, it all relies on people to take care of it. The disaster in Rome is just this stark, painful reminder that our amazing machines are only as reliable as the duty of care we're willing to give them, and to each other.